So sometimes it's this year, again, you want to talk about a change in practice. My change in practice this year um, is that we have a 3-year continuous improvement plan. In Ohio, we call it a one plan. It's connected to our federal funding. And so we align, goals and action steps with funding, right? And so something I shared with my staff this year is if it's not connected to the work that we're doing, we're not doing it. That means introducing any new things, right? That also means as far as like professional learning opportunities, we only have a certain pot of money. And so a practice that I recognized last year, which seems to have been had a stronghold here, was whomever wanted to go to like a conference here or a workshop there. We used federal monies to be able to fund those opportunities. But then you only had one person or two people, and the information never got back.
Yeah.
Well, that's great for that one person, but we're a system. And in our system, we all learn from each other, and we're going to build the capabilities. We're going to invest in our human capital here to be able to make us stronger from the inside out.
Welcome to the podcast. What is the invisible architecture that makes a great school district truly run? It's just not the buildings or the curriculum, it's the systems that connect everything and the people who bring those systems to life. Today, we are exploring this with a leader who has made it her focus. We are joined by Brooke Gessler, Superintendent of Celina City Schools. Brooke, thank you for being here with us.
You're welcome. Thank you for the invitation and opportunity. I appreciate it.
Would love to start with your journey because when you start in education, right, like you have something of, I think we are all dreamers when we join education. Is this
Mhm.
dream still alive when you joined it, 25, 3 years ago? And how do you feel about it right now?
Well, that's a great question. So I think what I can share is I'm in the profession of helping people. And so I think that that is what the world of education brings, because when I started as a teacher, I was directly impacting kids, students, and I come from a high school background. So I was a high school English teacher. But I very much always wanted to try to make the day better, despite the content sometimes. I wanted to focus on my kids. And so I was blessed to be able to have, over 150, sometimes 180 kids who I saw throughout the day, year after year. And so that's a pretty powerful role, right? But I realized that I felt like I wanted to do more. I wanted to impact the world of education and my district in a bigger way. And so that's when I started to pursue administration. And so then when I became an assistant principal at the same high school where I taught, it was very eye-opening, right? So when you talk about a system, sometimes we don't see outside of the classroom when we're teachers. And so then when you have an opportunity to be a part of the district and the building in a different way, a different role, it's eyes wide open. And so that also held true when I left building administration role and moved on to central office. And then I really saw district, right? Because I'm seeing all the buildings, all the people, I'm seeing operations, not just what our teachers do, transportation, and how everything is connected. And really that's what our systems are. They're complex systems. So that's where I spent, the rest of a lot of my time. And then I knew that I wasn't done because I always had a goal to be a superintendent because I wanted to be an agent of change. And really, there's no bigger way to do that than the role of superintendent in a school district. And so that's what I pursued. And that's what brought me here to Celina City Schools in Celina, Ohio, in Mercer County, Ohio. And going on year 2 and loving every minute of it.
And what you said, right? It's systems that define it. I think from a classroom being
Mm-hmm.
small system in
Mm-hmm.
the whole district to being
Right.
a principal and like understanding how the school runs and like everything else. Because when you look at from a perspective of that, what do you think is the biggest common mistakes that a school superintendent forgets about the
Mm.
smallest system? Or like,
Yeah.
because what we
Yeah.
think does not always translate. And why is that?
So I think one of the biggest mistakes that any leader can make, regardless of a role in a system, is not recognizing that a decision is never just a singular decision. It's a decision that has a broader impact, whether directly or indirectly, on a system. And that can be anything from, hey, we want to look at changing our bell schedule in a building. Well, let's talk to the other buildings, right? Because what will happen if we have shared staffing? If we have students who maybe take, leave one building to take classes in another, if we have time of, arrival and departure for transportation, right? All of food services, all of those areas are impacted, for example, by that one singular decision that one building may think that they want to make. And so I think that's the biggest mistake that anyone can fall into, oftentimes unintentionally, right? But it's just, oh, I didn't think of that, or not communicating clearly when there's been a change. For example, if we change, it goes back to a schedule again. If we say, you know what, we have testing in our district for the state during this time, this is how our schedule is going to change, and we don't let our food services people know, that's a problem. If we have students leaving on a field trip, that's a problem, right? Because they're not eating at school. So those are some of the examples off the top of my head that I can think of that really we have to recognize the broader implication of a decision that we may not think has district-wide impact. Chances are it does in some way, shape, form.
Yeah, it does. Absolutely. I think what you just pointed out, right? Like going for a something else and like even having the food systems involved, it's not everyone's thinking of those things. So
Right.
how, so and this takes me to a very different place where how do you distribute it in your district? Do you let principals
Mhm.
decide for themselves, or do you let, because high school would think differently and the elementary would think absolutely
Right.
different terms. Their systems would
Right.
also look different, and the district can
Mhm.
see everything. So how would you want to, put it across?
Yeah. So what I've learned in my time here in Celina, and in our district, what I walked into was an environment and a culture that was very much siloed. And it was siloed for multiple reasons. Number one, when you have multiple buildings, and you only have in some of those buildings maybe one administrator, it's hard to, number one, ever leave the building, right? If you're the only person. And number two, to be able to have that set time for collaboration among administration. And so what I walked into again was a culture where there weren't necessarily, I call them administrative meetings, right? Those didn't exist on a consistent basis. And so that's something that we engaged with last year in my first year, and we continue to in year two um, that I'm here. And so we talk about, the things, I call them the things, right? It's the, what are the, anything from what's our testing schedule going to be? Here's the window for the state of Ohio. And we all get in a room, but we're talking about these things collectively. And so I think just by having the conversations, one, and having the conversations with the entire team, two, um, that's important, right? And so that's a practice that I think, again, it's modeling it and posing those questions that other people don't think of. But because I see the big picture, and I'm trying to encourage my admin team to as well, because they're not used to that, I think that's how we start to expand that systems thinking. right? And to get them thinking, oh, shoot, I might want to make this change. Oh, gosh. But okay, does that impact the elementary in any way? Does it not? At least to pick up the phone or send the email. Hey,
Yeah.
this is what we're thinking. Would that impact your building at all? So to start to have those, encourage those conversations among my administrative team. I don't have to lead all of it. That's the other key, right? It's you model it because this is the type of culture and climate that I want to create and maintain and continue to build on. So I don't know if that did I answer the question? I'm sorry.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think one of the key important pieces which I also took, right, like the fact that buildings can be siloed. It can
Mm-hmm.
happen a lot where
Mm-hmm.
they don't have a conversation flowing through him. Have you
Yes,
figured out like a day or a time when everyone meets in a month? Like
we
every
do.
Monday
We
for an
do.
hour?
Yes. Typically, I let my buildings kind of get their schedules set um, because they're trying to maneuver just as many pieces, right, as I am. And so my approach is, we, in our first meeting, I set the first meeting date, and then we all bring our calendars, and it's okay. Here's what we're doing for the rest of the year. I have an agenda for every month. That agenda is a collaborative one. There are things that I either have to add to our agenda to talk about, maybe from our previous meeting, if things were left undecided, perhaps, or we just needed to cut our conversation off and we just have to revisit it or review it. But then I also make it to where they can edit it. So if they can add different topics and areas that they have questions on or about, and that helps me
Yeah.
because I ask them to do that ahead of time. Because if I need to, slim down something that I really needed to touch upon, and I can include a link in there that might take them to resources so that I can make more time to talk about what they've added, it helps me also prioritize prior to our time together. But yes, we meet every month. Um, and we set those days and times and we commit to that and that's what we maintain.
And just coming from here, right? Because I think you guys are meeting every month, but also
Mhm.
you would need to hire, right? Because human capital becomes a super
Correct.
important piece to this whole thing. So I'm going to ask
Correct.
you a twofold question. One is the retaining your best people, because I think it's the most important thing we can do in a bigger district is to make sure that the ones who make it run are still in charge and still being, taken care of.
Yeah.
How do you look at that piece? And then the other question would be, how do you figure out when you're hiring a new person that they would be a team builder, they would fit in the right culture? What is that one question that you ask them?
Mm. So I think first when we talk about retention, right, especially in our profession, which seems to be under assault a lot,
Yeah.
especially for public education, right? Um, I think that it's important that we identify how are we doing as a district. I know that's an area that I need to work harder in for me personally because I want to make sure that our new folks coming in who we've hired, whether it be certified or classified or administratively, do you feel supported? And do you know that while we have a chain of command, so to speak, for communication, a hierarchy established, my door is an open door policy, right? And so I try to make myself accessible and to where if there is something that I need to know, that I create the opportunity for people to share that. Right. But I also need to make sure that I am redirecting where necessary those people back to maybe that building level or that supervisor level, sometimes in the case of classified. So that's key, number one. I also, in my district, what I started last year that I'm looking to expand this year, haven't quite figured out the logistics of it yet because it's just me right now, um, is that I had exit interviews I started last year with our certified staff.
Yeah.
Um, and so those conversations were very helpful. I had teachers tell me, oh my gosh, Brooke, I've never talked to my superintendent like this. And I'm like, we're just having a conversation. I don't have a script. I don't have specific questions. Um, Although I do try to start off with one is, talk to me about, your time here in the district, whether it was 16 years or whether it was two. Talk to me about that. And what are some things that you think that we can do better with, right? And not just at the building level, but district wide. Um, and so those conversations are important. I also, a takeaway that I got, which again, I haven't figured out how to do this yet either, because it's just me right now, is not just exit interviews, but what are referred to as stay interviews. Having those conversations with the people who are currently in your district, who you don't believe are necessarily leaving to go anywhere. But how do you have those conversations, right? And what has kept you here? Why have you stayed? Why have you chosen to stay? And even with that, what are some things that you think that we can do better with, right? Where we might need to focus on a little bit more as leaders, as administrators. So I think just making opportunities for people to be seen and heard, and let them know they're actually heard. It's not just smoke and mirrors. It's authentic and it's credible. Is invaluable, and so I think that's very important when you're talking about interviews. I actually talked about this with my admin last year. Because I said, I want you to invite me to all the interviews. I don't know that I can make them. I need you to lead them. But
Yeah.
here are some questions, and these are the questions that I want you to please ask, right? If I am not there to ask them. It's, you know, tell me, what is it, like, for example, if it's a certified position, tell me what you believe about kids, right? Tell me, what is it that, do you teach kids or do you teach content?
Yeah.
Because we're here for kids. And then I want you to talk to me about how you engage families,
Absolutely.
right? And if you're a new teacher and you haven't done that yet, tell me how might that look for you? Because we have to bring in the families.
Yeah.
We are partners in this, right? So those are key questions that are based on fundamental beliefs that I have, and that I want to make a part of our culture here in Celina.
What's the, when you ask these questions, right? What's that one answer which has taken you by shock till now? Like the one which you never expected and someone just said something which, made you remember them.
Interviews are tough. I'll just be honest with you; they're very hard, probably for the interviewee and the interviewer. Um, when you engage in interviews long enough, number one, you start to become very leery of the interviewee who is like the best, most well spoken, sounds like they just rehearse these questions day in, day out, their answers. And those are the ones who I kind of press pause on, right? Because what I look for is the nonverbals as much as what they're saying to me. Because I want to know, like, did you have to really think about that question? Because that's what I'm looking for. And did you stop yourself midstream because either one, you had to ask, I'm sorry, what was the question again? Or was it, I'm sorry, did that answer your question? Right. Because to me, that can be indicative of reflective practices.
Yeah.
Um, and nerves are a part of a lot of them. Right. Can I tell you that there's just one response that has surprised me? Um, no, there isn't. But what I can say is you can see it really quickly when I'm so sorry.
No
You
problem.
can see it pretty quickly when someone isn't being authentic or credible. You see it, you hear it, um, you notice it, and that's not a person who's going to be one of my first picks. If I have a choice in the matter, because we have a big pool, it's not for me. It's not.
Absolutely. I think having the right authentic people with integrity is an
Yeah.
absolute key. You can't work without those folks around you.
Yeah. And
Specifically,
sometimes, you asked about I'm sorry, I just wanted to address this too, because you asked, how do you know if they're going to be a good fit? Um, Sometimes, sometimes it's an instinct. Sometimes, you just get a really good, I know it sounds a, a bit cliche or even cheesy, but right? You get a good feeling of the person. And sometimes you get a good feeling of the person and then you think you had, but then when you see the person in action, it's completely opposite of what you anticipated. And you figure out, oh, maybe that wasn't the best choice, but we're going to pour into that person, right? Because we're going to coach you up or we're going to coach you out,
yeah,
because we have students' education at stake. And so that's an approach that I have also imparted on my admin is, we have our evaluation system for a reason. And so we need to be ready to have those more difficult conversations. And what help might you need for that to take place? Because that's important as well. And so sometimes you learn about people in those exchanges because some people can take the feedback and can try to apply it and do something with it and receive it well, and others they don't want any part of it. Um, that's also not the type of employee we want it in the district.
for sure. I think having people who understand and take feedback, it's part of the authenticity, right? Like it's being authentic to yourself and
Yeah,
understanding
it is.
your flaws.
It is absolutely.
Moving from just the people, moving to district level challenges, right? Because it's been 2 years since you've been here and like year and a
Yeah.
half, and like you're figuring, I think you've already got everything in most of the things in control. What has been something which has come about your place? An example of something which you think was, heavy lifting that you had to do within the first year in itself, which
Mm.
might not be the same for others. How did you address it?
Oh, um, that's a really good question. So I think and I'm still, it's still a lift. The work is not done in this area. Um, in addition to siloed um, practices and buildings, right? Um, and areas, even in operations. Um, it was because they were siloed, um, we had a lack of and breakdowns in communication. Um, and so I had to learn to be more explicit about my expectations, um, so that when I have, like a head of maintenance, um, making sure that anything that is maintenance related in buildings that we share the information. Again, not necessarily because we need that team to fix it, but we have to just to make them aware and to keep them in the loop, right? People want to feel a part of. And one of the easiest ways and best ways to do that is through communication. So that I am still continuing to develop those expectations, and those practices here now this year, and it will continue. The other piece that I was not expecting, that I'm still working with and through in developing our processes. When there aren't specific processes that people follow, or that are in place, right, for workflow,
Yeah.
um, and to for and not just workflow in general, but also for effective and efficient workflow. Um, that is something that we're continuing to work through and to develop. And so when you talk about that systems thinking, it's something as simple as, how do we procure substitutes for our classified staff and our certified staff,
Yeah.
right? Recognizing that right now we have two very different processes and we have barriers in getting substitutes, and guests to fill those positions because of this. So again, some things are taking a little bit more time. Um, but it's I mean it's a work in progress, right? Because I need to make sure that I'm modeling in my thinking, I'm doing it out loud,
Yeah.
right? Even if I think I know the answer, I'm going to ask the questions because that's a part of bringing other people into the conversation. And it's, wait a minute, who's in the room and who's not in the room, who we need in the room. And then that too is modeling. And even if that person doesn't think they have a role, come to find out there's going to be something that touches their world because again, it's a complex system. And so that's something again we just try to work through and I'm trying to build and we're making changes as we go. There's some it's low hanging fruit. Others, it's going to take a little bit longer,
Yeah.
right? But we get the wheels in motion for that to happen. So lack of processes, and along with that, needing to definitely strengthen communication across the district are two key areas that I recognize coming in, and that are they are and both of they are heavy lifts, and I cannot do it alone, and so it's bringing folks along with me in that.
I think both of them, as you said, is heavy lift. Communication, super heavy lift because
Yeah.
it's a culture change, right? Like it's not something. It's a culture according to what you believe in and what Brooke,
Yes.
the pretendant, is bringing into the team. So, did you do a professional development for teachers and the staff, and like, did you lead that? Did you get someone else to kind of bring in and just to make
Hmm.
sure that this communication piece gets solved out?
Hmm. Um, I do both. So sometimes it's this year, again, you want to talk about a change in practice. My change in practice this year um, is that we have a 3-year continuous improvement plan. In Ohio, we call it a one plan. It's connected to our federal funding. And so we align, goals and action steps with funding, right? And so something I shared with my staff this year is if it's not connected to the work that we're doing, we're not doing it. That means introducing any new things, right? That also means as far as like professional learning opportunities, we only have a certain pot of money. And so a practice that I recognized last year, which seems to have been had a stronghold here, was whomever wanted to go to like a conference here or a workshop there. We used federal monies to be able to fund those opportunities, but then you only had one person or two people, and the information never got back.
Yeah.
Well, that's great for that one person, but we're a system. And in our system, we all learn from each other and we're going to build the capabilities. We're going to invest in our human capital here to be able to make us stronger from the inside out. I'm not naive enough to think that we're going to be able to do that with all of our in house resources and our own people. And so that's when it's, you know what, if we have teachers who need extra support with, this specific aspect of a curriculum, right? Then I'm going to reach out to that educational partner of the curriculum and say, hey, I have some professional learning dollars I've allocated for this. Here's what's happening. I need your help. And so then we bring them in and they work with our teachers in that capacity. We try to tailor that to the people.
Yeah.
Um, so again, it depends on what it is, but it's remembering that this is where we're headed. These are our arrows are pointed in this direction. And so if there's something that would misalign, right, with what we're doing in the direction we're headed, we're not doing it. And that means saying no sometimes. So that's happening this year. But I always try to explain the why behind the what for folks.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't have systems which are still running in place which do not give you the outputs you need.
Hmm.
You need,
Absolutely.
yeah, some have to shut down to start something new, and I think that's one of your major important jobs as a
Yeah.
decision maker, to take those tough decisions, right? Because it's not an easy one.
Yeah. And maybe I don't know. I don't think that I'm different in this way from other leaders and superintendents, even, is that to me, though, that's where the fun and sense of purpose and fulfillment comes in this work,
Yeah.
right? Because you have an opportunity to see a district, see its potential, and oh, if we just make this tweak here and this tweak there and shift this practice here and are consistent, right, and what we do, um, to align our actions with our words, um, we're going to see that. We're going to see that effort and that consistency and that grit pay off. And that's what I believe. And so that's where the fun is, right?
Absolutely. 100% I think the fun is in making sure that the system and like it runs like a well-oiled machine.
Yep.
No,
And creating an adaptive one, right? So,
absolutely.
because we never know what's going to happen. And
100%.
so it's if we have to make a shift here, um, are we able to do that, right? Whether it's with our existing personnel and our current structure, or what might we need to have in place as almost like a contingency, right? If what if we lose this person, or what if we, that position goes away, or what if we want to add a position, right? Because here's a need that we want to fulfill for kids,
Yeah.
and we want to meet that. And so, what does that look like? And so that's again when we talk about human capital, because that's our biggest asset. Um, is that's you want to create a system that can adapt to different changes in that way, or at least have processes, um, so that they know, even if it's okay, guys, here's a change we see coming, who needs to be in the room. To me, that is indicative of a collaborative culture and environment, and one that truly will be able to be more adaptive, because you're taking steps in the planning process, right, to know who needs to help make this decision, um, and to inform it, maybe not make it, but maybe inform it. So yeah.
And I know I'm gonna go in a little different direction because
Okay.
the different direction is like because we have a lot of leaders coming in, right? Like from your perspective, what is one common held belief that everyone keeps saying but is completely off the mark?
I think that trying to hold on to deeply rooted traditional approaches um, is I this might sound very extreme and perhaps somewhat melodramatic, but I think that's a death sentence for
Yeah.
leadership. When we aren't recognizing that the world around us is changing, and we have to consider how do we shift practices internally in order to better adapt, right? When I talked about adaptivity, this is what another example of what I'm talking about. So, for example, in our society right now, we are contending with, we don't have kids who really smoke cigarettes anymore. We have kids who vape,
Yeah.
and it is accessible, and they're getting their hands on it, and it is an addiction that I've not seen the like, because it's running rampant, and any district that thinks that it's not happening inside their walls um, is quite naive, because it is happening to some extent, right? um, that in conjunction with like the THC,
Yeah.
I think that's something that we are contending with, where in Ohio, I know, and even in our district, right? And so it's, do we want to condone that? Absolutely not. But our punitive measures for discipline, is it changing the behavior? It's
Hmm.
not. It's not. And so this is when we have to come to a place where we we aren't okay with that behavior, right? Because it can be destructive behavior for a kiddo. Um, however, how do we work to change the behavior, or to at least change our message about the behavior? Because again, what we have in place, whether it's in school restriction, out of school restriction, expulsion, if I'm going to expel a student, it better be for something more severe than THC, because I am the one then who is directly impacting that child's future. And I don't sleep at night knowing that. So, it's what, and with that though, it's what resources do we have outside of a district? When you talk about a system, you also talk about a community.
Absolutely.
Um, and so I think for leaders in the work today, it's trying to fight battles instead of trying to figure out what do we need to adapt in what we do from a more traditional perhaps way of thinking, um, that we find a way to keep kids safe. We work through them on their bad choices, right? Because we don't want the choices to define them as human beings.
Yeah.
um, you made a bad choice. Now, you make that same choice again and again. And now we have a pattern of destructive behaviors, right? But all we can do is help what we can while we have them. And outside of that, it's out of our control, right? So I really think just again, the whole traditional way of thinking around certain practices, approaches with discipline, and the trauma that our kids have coming in. Well, they should be able to sit still and listen for X number of minutes. No, because adults can't either. FYI,
That's
right? So again, I think it's just kind of working through some of that, the shift in pedagogy, the shift in thinking, and that moving away from that more traditional expectation.
when you were saying all of this thing, one of the things that came across to me and just hit me was a quote from a TV show, which was Ted Lasso, right? Like it had said, either all of us or none of us should be judged at our weakest moment.
Hmm.
And it's super
Hmm.
true for our students because uh, even if we're judging them at the weakest, we should remember what was us at that weakest
Yeah,
moment looks like.
yeah,
And it's super powerful. It just tells
yeah,
us all that forgiveness is a virtue and like how do you make it work. Look at the
yeah.
like making it work is more important than worrying about the past and what has happened and what used to happen, because
Yes.
what used to happen did not is not the case anymore. There was no social media back in the day. There was no as much widespread use of laptops and now AI and now
Hmm.
everything is at the fingertips. It's
Right, right.
nothing's the
Yeah.
same.
And yes, that is so true, because here's the thing. No one wants to be labeled. Um, Everyone wants to believe that they have a fair shot, right? I believe that. And so, we have the opportunity, and even when our kids, and I say this because we have some kids who are really hard to love. Every place has kids who are just hard to love. um, but it's remembering that, when we're working through maybe bad decisions and choices that young people have made, and make, is number one, how do we leave the conversation with them being able to have their dignity intact?
Yeah.
One. Um, and while there is learning with humility, right? It's a very fine line and a very delicate balance. And so I think that that's something that we have to remember too, is it's people make bad choices. And sometimes those choices just have devastating consequences, right? Um, we also have to try to find the good in people. And I think that's just something that is universal, right? Um, and so kind of keeping those important beliefs at the forefront of what we do and who we are matter. I always say language matters, and using the wrong word can have greater implications than what we ever know, because we will never see potential damage it can do.
Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah.
Before I let you go, this is the last question I sure I'm going to ask you.
Okay.
It's basically a segment that we do. It's something which the previous leader or the previous person on the podcast has left this question for us to ask you. It's because as a superintendent, your time is super precious and it's kind of spread out, and you have to choose what to focus your priorities on and what not to focus your priorities on.
Yeah.
So how do you allocate your time? That's their question that they wanted to know. How do I think
Mhm.
they wanted to understand how do you make sure that their time is being spent in the right places, because they always worry about if they're doing it the right job. So how do you, and they couldn't sleep on it. So then they left this
Yeah.
question and asked someone else.
Oh, um, I I allocate my time. I have to prioritize it and allocate it based on what the situation is. Every day looks different. Um, yesterday I was in one of our buildings and we had to have our local PD come because we had an issue with and conflict with adults in the building who came to the building, not with our staff. And so, what I thought my day was going to look like in the morning at that building quickly changed. Right. And so it's whatever the need is that arises and whatever support I can offer. My building admin had it under control. Right. But I wanted to be there because I wanted to make sure, number one, do you need me for anything? And number two, how can I help you? Right. Um, and so, how do I allocate my time? It looks different every day. But what I can tell you is, do I do it really well between my professional, my personal life with my family? No, I do not. No, I don't. Um, and I need to get better at that to where when I'm home, I'm present because I have my husband and I have a 22-year-old who's off at college, but then we also have a 14-year-old who's still at home and isn't quite used to mom working in a different district than where he goes to school, right? And 35 minutes away. Um, and so, I think that's something that I'm working toward. But to answer that question, how do I do it? It's based on what, while I'm at work, what need arises. But what I tell my people is, and I don't practice what I preach, by the way. So I'll get better. But I say it's always family first. That's what I tell my people. It's your family first. Please do what you need to do and let us know how we can support you here so that you can be focused on your family while they need you. And then when you're back at work, we'll get it figured out. And so I say that and I hold true to that because I do believe that it's so important for people not to feel like they're left to make a choice between, oh my gosh, am I going to get in trouble at work or is this a thing? But I really need to be at the hospital because, my mom is having surgery or I need to be there for my family in this way. Right. I don't want them to have to make that choice. You're going to choose your family and where you need to be first, and we'll figure it out here at work second.
That sounds lovely. Thank you so much. I think this was super insightful.
Oh, I hope so. I hope it helps someone. Because I always try to take feedback and when I, follow different leaders and not just in public education, right, but in private sector too, because I think we can both learn from each other. Um, it's so helpful. So any way that I can help anyone else, I certainly am willing to do that.
Yeah, and it absolutely shows in the work and the spirit that you have. I think.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate the opportunity even more. So thank you for what you do.
Thanks a lot.